This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're fortunate tonight to have as our guest one of my favorite guys in the legislature, POL Beckman, who represents Autauga County in the House and in his second term, and he's one of the good guys up there on Goat Hill, and he came with a majority change in 2010, and we're glad to have Paul on the show because even though this show goes on public television throughout southeast Alabama, my biggest viewing audience is in the River region in Montgomery, Autauga, and Elmore County. We're glad to have Prattville's representative, POL Beckman, with us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Paul is a practicing attorney, y'all. He's been in practice here in the River region 21, 22 years, hasn't you?
That's correct.
Not trying to tell your age or anything, but you've been practicing law quite a while. The name of your firm is?
Right now it's Capuana, Beckman, and Russell, but it was the old firm of Capuana, Sansone, Bolts, and Presswood.
And now that the Presswood wasn't from Covington County originally, was he?
No, he wasn't.
There were a lot of Presswood lawyers in Covington County. You aware of that?
No, I wasn't.
They're good, doggone good lawyers. We had your good friend Mike Jones on the other day, and Mike and I were talking about the lawyers down in Andalusia. They've had a lot of good lawyers over the years. They had some Presswoods, but then the guy going on the Ethics Commission is chairman, Tom Albritton, who's made chairman of the Ethics Commission, is an Andalusia lawyer.
Right.
And it's Mike's colleague, and they're the same age and everything.
Right.
Did you know that?
No, I did not.
Now, you serve on judiciary with Mike Jones, don't you?
That's correct. I serve on judiciary and...
Which is a logical committee for being a lawyer.
Right, and I'm chair of the subcommittee for the civil matters.
So they divide that up now. When I was in the House, you just took on everything.
Right.
You know, they've changed it much more. I think Seth brought that on the table some, did some of that, but then in the new time, Paul, now you're married and have one son.
I have a wife that's a psychiatric nurse, so she has to deal with me, and I have one son who is 33, and he's doing his thing, and he went to school here in Montgomery area, and then he went out of state for a while for school, and then now he's back.
Does your wife practice nursing here in
Right, she runs the out-partial program over at Crossbridge.
Okay, good. Hey, Paul, what about now, when you had been practicing law for several years, and you came to the House in 2010 in that big Republican takeover that year, tell me how you got interested in running for the House. They come talk to you, or did they recruit you, or how did you decide to get into politics after practicing law and living in Prattville for, well, you lived in Prattville for 30 years now, haven't you?
Right. I'm kind of like the Maverick. I ran against an individual named Mac Gibson that had been in there.
So you beat Mac for the House?
So I beat Mac. What it was, I had essentially, I think about in 2008, 2009, I think it was 2008, I ran for city council and I got beat. I had some good friends of mine that helped me, and I got to know that were ex-city council members, and they said a lot of it was about name exposure. And I was at a point in my life where I wanted to offer something back to the community. My child was grown, my wife and I were there, just her and I doing our business as far as our trades are concerned, and we wanted to give back to the community. So when I ran for city council and was unsuccessful, I thought I ran a good campaign. Friends came to me and says, you ran a good campaign, and they said, use that exposure for your name, because a lot of times is if you don't go back out or do something, you're going to lose it. So what we did was we turned right around and we ran in the 2010 election. At that time, I didn't have any support from any of the Republicans. I was my own person. I paid my own bills. I was fortunate enough to have some money saved and used my money, and my wife said, well, why do we want to do that? I said, well, we can't take it where we're going to go, you know. So I used my money, wasn't obligated to anybody, and just went on basic, simple core values. I ran on a basic principle that I'm an offspring of the greatest generation, and we need to bring back some of our traditions and the way we do things of hard work, smaller government, and low taxes.
Paul, you know, so you weren't part of the group that took on Democratic members, that Catawba County seat has been a Republican seat for 25 years.
That is absolutely correct.
That's a Republican seat regardless. Mac would have been there as a Republican and you're as a Republican.
Right.
So you just beat him in the primary.
That is absolutely correct.
That's a Republican seat. You know, there was an interesting article, what I thought was a very favorable article in the news about Prattville recently. Tell our viewers, you know, Prattville's got a lot to offer. It's not just a bedroom community, which it was when you first moved there probably. What, how many, 25, 30 years ago?
We moved there in 1980, so it's about 33, 34 years, and we're still living in the same house.
How big was the population when you moved
I think when I moved there, it was somewhere between 14 and 17,000.
It's 38 now.
Yeah, right. And so I've seen it grown. I've seen it Ben pushed the envelope, and the new mayor that we have, Bill Gillespie, inherited some issues because of the economy, and we might have overextended there for a while, but he's pulled us out. He's done a fantastic job. The leadership and the superintendent, the new superintendent of schools, Spence Agee, done a tremendous job there as far as keeping money, keeping teachers. We don't have any failing schools in Watauga County. We're the 134th as far as getting money, so we do more with less. I don't want to advocate that, but I mean, the point of it is when you have good leadership, things happen. And so we're coming out of the financial crunch that we had as far as taxes were concerned. We had built shopping centers. Now we're getting into economic development. So we're expanding, and we have more people moving out to the communities because we have good schools. We have safe communities. And so it is no longer a bedroom type or we're a suburb of Montgomery. Montgomery may be one day the suburb of Prattville.
Yes, but you think one of the driving engines, you think, for the growth, and the population's got to be a lot of people who have school-aged children, is a school system and the safety factor? You think that's
definitely? I think a lot of it is the safety, and it all starts off too because when I first got out there, we had a lot of military out there. We had a lot of the War College people from Maxwell and Gunner.
You still do, don't you?
We still do. They, for some reason, they come into the Millbrook and the Prattville area, and of course I also represent Millbrook, and so it kind of reminds me of home. And I don't know if you know this, that I grew up in the Panhandle down in Fort Walton Beach.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, so
well, you saw the military influence there.
I saw it there. We had we had Eglin and Hurlburt there, and here we got Maxwell and Gunner there. So it's on
same thing.
Same thing. Golf courses. The only difference was the water.
You know, I had Todd Strange, the mayor of Montgomery, sitting right here, and I just absentmindedly had assumed. And I said to him, I guess the cutback in state employees has hurt your community, your city, because it's your biggest employer. Making that assumption. He says, no, that's not our biggest employer. He said, our biggest employer is Maxwell Gunner. And the second biggest is a new Hyundai plant. And the third would be state employment, which is shocking to most people because they assume with the capital being here that the state government would be the biggest employer in Montgomery and the river region. But Pratt will be reflective of the same thing. Your probably biggest employers would be military over state employees. Pretty much a lot of both, though, wouldn't it?
It would be the same composition. I would say probably not so much as far as the Hyundai people, but I would say majority of it is the military
and state
employees.
Well, Paul, you know, that brings us to a point. You know, the last, and I want to set the stage for this because the big topic of the legislative session, which y'all are embroiled in, has been the problem in the general fund budget. And I don't want to be elementary or talk to my viewers like they don't know, but if most of our viewers are not aware that we have two state budgets. We have an education trust fund budget and we have a general fund budget. And historically, the reason the education budget was started was during the Depression. Our schools were so woefully underfunded that some far-seeing governors like Bibb Graves created the Special Education Trust Fund budget. And at that time, they earmarked some new taxes, which were sort of new. The income and sales tax were basically new taxes in the 1920s and 30s. And they gave those taxes to the Education Trust Fund budget. And those are our growth taxes. As the economy has picked up, as the growth has grown. Paul, when I was a freshman legislator in 1982, the budgets were equal. there was 50% of the budget in the general and education trust fund budget. Now, because those growth taxes have come up so much,
Right.
education is 2/3, as you know.
Right.
And the general fund just really hasn't had a lot of growth. And you being a legislator from Prattville, Autauga, and Millbrook, you've got a lot of state employees. I mean, you've probably seen, you probably got higher income state employees. You've got some of the leaders of the state government, but you've got, it's a tough situation because the governor, and it's not saying there's a problem in the special education trust fund budget, although we're not, the most flush in the world in that. The problem is in the general fund there's been no growth. And I said this, and Bentley likes to kid me about it through my column through the years. When they were running in 2010, anybody who could see what was happening could see that for Riley's entire 8-year term, we'd been living on federal stimulus money. Mm-hmm. The general fund was broke essentially during his entire 8-year tenure. So I'm setting the stage, say this is not a problem y'all created. This problem has been formulating and percolating for at least a decade. Mm-hmm. And the chickens had to come home to roost eventually. And I thought they'd come home to roost 4 years ago.
Right.
And I said whoever's running for governor, whether Bradley Byrne wins, Tim James wins, Governor Bentley wins, whoever wins that governor's race is probably going to be a one-term governor because they've either got to make a choice to raise taxes or revenue some way or make excruciating cuts in state government. Mm-hmm. Well, y'all were able to get by those 4 years some way or other, but the rubber's hit the road now. The chickens have come home to roost. So what's your take on that? I mean, you represent a lot of state employees, and that is the issue in this session because you were able to avoid it for 4 years, but and I'm saying this, it wasn't Bentley's fault, it wasn't y'all in the legislature currently's fault, although there's some sitting there been there a long time. But what I've said, what's your take on all that?
Well, my first take on it, I was a little flabbergasted being a rookie as my first 4 years in. We were basically kind of just feeling our way around as far as doing, and the whole idea was for smaller government. So we started consolidating, cutting things as far as in state government was concerned and everything else. But you can only cut so much. After a while, people want services, people want to pay for services, and there's certain services. So the first 4 years was about determining what our priorities were, because our priorities may have changed over the last 20 years. So we've looked at that. Now, what flabbergasted me in the whole matter was that a lot of us legislators, including myself, thought we were in good footing. For example, the governor didn't want to debate as far as the taxes prior to running against Parker Griffin. He basically, it was implied that everything was good. We had one more payment on the rainy day fund. Sales taxes were up. We had no idea that basically that this Medicaid was going to get out of hand. If you look at the general budget is about $1.8 billion. But about $800 million or $700 million of that is going into the
Medicaid.
Mm-hmm. Right. So we have that issue to deal with. I thought, to be honest with you, when it was sprung on us at the end, when the governor got elected, and then all of a sudden we wanted $700 million. So he said, to me it kind of was, well, I thought we heard no new taxes. Because I understand maybe $400 million is about new spending, about the roads, about our infrastructure, things that we have to fix. So I was a little concerned about this. It is a complex problem because, like you said, it's gone on for generations, and we need to fix it. But I don't think it's something that you're going to be able to fix right off the bat. For example, we didn't hear anything until after the governor got elected. When the governor got elected, all of a sudden we heard it. Now it's 3 months later and we got this plan out there as if that's supposed to solve all our issues as far as the taxes are concerned. I think it's like the speaker said, we need to look at this, we need to put our arms around it, and we need to solve the problems, and we need to do it and not put a Band-Aid over it, and we need to go ahead and solve it. The question is how do we solve it? The governor has shown a little leadership by coming out with all these proposals on taxes, and nobody likes them. Nobody likes any of these type of taxes. But we have to look at it because basically the bottom line is the general fund is sick. I don't like the idea that we want to transfer any money from the ETF, the Educational Trust Fund, over to the general fund, because we have things in the Educational Trust Fund such as nursing homes, such as mental health, such as rehabilitation. As far as these are some of the programs that are been in the Educational Trust Fund. What we have in the general fund is how to operate our government, and we need to basically make that trust, that general fund, well. The question is how do we do it? And this is the proposals that we have thrown out there. We haven't had any concrete except for what the governor has thrown out there. So we need to look at it. I mean, I'm not in favor, first of all, of raising taxes, but I also have to look at it, and I don't want to basically cut, because I come from an area where I have state employees that are working for the state, and I'm not going to let my neighbors lose their job because of cutting. So we have to do something. So the question is, or the $64 question is what it is. We've seen the governor's, I think, 8 or 9 proposals. I can't agree with any of them. Maybe the only one I can look at probably and maybe considered is the smoking tax. But anything else other than that, there's some ideas on the board. We still want to do a little bit more tweaking as far as government, but it's not going to raise you $250 million. They're talking about consolidating the historical commission and and they're also talking about looking at some of the cabinet members and consolidating that where we don't. But that's still not going to solve our problem. What's going to solve our problem is everybody getting together and looking at it. And I don't think we need to be robbing Peter to pay Paul. In other words, take from the Educational Trust Fund. We need to fix the general fund. And we are scheduled probably in the 22nd of April, we are scheduled and notified that we are going to have a caucus work session. So I'm sure the leadership now is starting to put some things together as far as us to look at as far as a counter proposal in reference to the governor. The governor has laid out his proposal, and he knew if you ask for the stars, you know, he knows he's not going to get the stars. He may get the moon or he may get the clouds. But the point of it is he's laid something out. Now let's see what we can do as far as a group, come out with some ideas as how we want to do it. We have to think outside the box. We have to basically put our heads together and for the first time put our self-interests aside and work together to solve the problem for the people.
So you know, there are a lot of legislators. I know this is a very conservative group of legislators, and mostly lean towards Tea Party philosophy, which is less government. And I think that is a general genre for the entire state, your constituency and other constituencies. But there's certain legislators who have taken a no tax pledge that they just ain't gonna vote for any taxes regardless. There's some of your colleagues that are in that position, haven't they? They ran on that platform. Mm-hmm. They said, "Look, I'm going to take a Grover Norquist no tax pledge, and I'm not going to vote for anything tax-wise." And are there a lot of your colleagues are in that boat?
Some of them are in that colleague, and I'll be honest with you. In 2010, I ran on that same type of proposition. But about 2012, I basically came away with a different proposition, with the idea that it was really irresponsible to say no taxes, because when you have 76 tornadoes go through Tuscaloosa, you've got to be able to have some form of flexibility to help the people that got hurt. So we're in a situation, when I ran this
You didn't say that this time.
I didn't say that. So basically, I don't want taxes, but I want to keep an open mind, because when we don't have enough state troopers on the road, and you're seeing people going by at, I'm passing you by, and you're going 75, maybe 5 miles over, and they're going 80, 90 miles an hour, and they're weaving in and out of traffic. You're asking yourself, where are these state troopers? And the thing of it is, we can't afford it. The point, or we're not putting them out there. Well, we can't afford it, but some people are willing to pay for their services, and us as legislators have to make it work with the amount of money that we have and based on our priorities. Right now, I think we've cut all we can cut. Now, when you start cutting, you're basically going to start cutting services out that the people want and the people need of this state.
I think you're right. Paul, what about, but you got some that ran and had tough primary races this time, that they going to sit on that problem. What do you think? A third of them that vote, you think, ain't gonna vote for any taxes?
Well, I think they want to look at it. What sort of proposals we have? Whether there's been a lot of ideas. Some ideas have been, well, as you saw, the Democrats have raised the issue of gaming on a lottery. Some have raised as far as the Porch Creek Indians, as far as coming with a compact fee. I mean, I look at it. I don't want to run my government on that. But I mean, every little bit helps because they're not paying anything right now. The idea, I'll look at that because you and I are working and we're paying taxes, and they're using our infrastructure and they're not paying anything.
I agree. Paul, one thing I get from my column throughout the state is, and my readers, is that they say, why don't we have a lottery? And they're aware that 48 other states get money, and all of our sister states around us. But as Governor Bentley said this last weekend, that's not going to solve this year's problem. All you can do as a legislator, and our viewers need to know this, is a lottery at best is 2 years away. If indeed you voted on it, all you do as a legislator is put it on the ballot as a constitutional provision.
Right.
The voters have to vote on it, and then it would be a year to implement. So you're looking at 2 years down the road, and it's not going to be, that's not going to be today's fix. And it's not a panacea either.
That's
correct. As you said, it's $200 million.
Right.
Because we're late coming to the dance, even if we do have a lottery. I mean, Tennessee's already got one, Georgia's already got one, Mississippi's got full-fledged gambling, Florida's got everything. You know, we're surrounded by everybody who has it, so we're not going to be the.
Well, my take on that is that I don't think that we should create the wheel. In other words, there's as you probably well of the products of there as far as the Mega Ball, Powerball out there that are run by other states. You can hook up with the other states, have it state at large, and you don't have to set up your gaming commission. You don't have to do all the legwork. It's already there. I get real nervous when we start saying, well, we're going to set this commission up and we're going to run it ourselves, in reference to who's going to be involved in there. When you have other states involved, they're going to make sure you got clean hands, so to speak, and everything else. So it's kind of like a checks and balance if you go that route. But I'm not saying that's the perfect idea. The other thought was it's come down, as some people have thought about, when you file your income tax, is that you don't get your federal deduction like our federal government.
There's a lot of money in that.
Yeah.
I had Jimmy Hollis sitting here and I posed that to him, and he said, Steve, it's like $300 million. It's a lot of money in that.
Well, we're not allowed to do it as far as our federal government. We can't do it.
That's a year away too.
Yeah.
You got to vote on it. That's not. I sat here and I told Holly, I said, I thought that would be one of Bentley's proposals. Jimmy Howell and I sat together in the house for years, and I sat here with we were sitting on the show. And I said, Holly, why don't the state do away with the federal deduction off state tax? He said, Steve, that's a lot of money. It's like $300 or $400 million. It would be the entire thing. He said, but that is like a lottery. It's got to be voted on. And Paul, people, generally speaking, are not going to vote for new taxes.
Well,
when you put it on the ballot.
And that's the dilemma that we have to make as far as tough choices. I personally think when they want to start talking about $700 million, as the governor says, I start saying, well, let's put it on the ballot, because I think it's disingenuous to say we want our legislators to vote for a tax increase of $700 million and not have the people have anything to say with it, with this idea, well, we voted for our representatives and our senators up there, and they basically are speaking for us. Well, we all know how that politics works. For example, if we don't go along with the tax increase, we heard the governor say point blank, we're not going to basically build you any infrastructure, any roads in your county. And nobody wants to hear that. So, we're getting strong-armed too. But the important thing is the majority of my colleagues, they want to do what's right. They're listening to the people. And I personally, if it gets to a point where it's really out of hand, I have no problem walking up to the podium on the well and asking for an amendment, say, let the people vote on this. Yeah. Because I don't think it's right when you start doing that. But we have to think outside the box. That's the bottom line. We have to come up with a solution.
Well, it may be, and I'll ask you one final thing about the budget, I'll leave it alone. it may not be resolved during the regular session.
And I agree with that. I mean, it's something that you look at. We heard about this right after the election. We're trying to fix it in 3 months, 4 months. It's like the speaker and all of us saying we may be able to fix this, put a Band-Aid over the short term, because this is going to be a year process so we can get our arms around it and figure out which is the best way, what's out there. Nobody's talking about the BP money. Nobody's talking about many years ago as far as the oil and gas fields that basically are coming up for renewal. The federal government was supposed to have some money for us, and we're supposed. I haven't heard anything about that.
We will get a windfall off that.
Yeah.
Paul, one of this, it may be a special session before we resolve it. We've only got about 2 minutes left. You are sponsoring a bill that I think may be interesting to some people in our viewing audience, and I want you to clarify. You're the sponsor of the bill to raise the limit on judges past age 70. Most viewers don't know our judges in Alabama, circuit, state, district, state Supreme Court, have a limit of 70. If you're 70 years old, you cannot run for a judgeship. Now, if you're 69, you can run and you serve your 6-year term till you're 75. But that used to be the law for all state employees, but the judges are the only ones that are captured under that law now. But you're trying to raise that at this time, aren't you?
Yeah, I try to raise it. Everybody called it the Roy Moore bill, and that's the farthest thing from the truth.
You ain't thought about it.
I didn't think about it. I may be good, but I'm not that good, you know, as I said to you earlier. But the point that I think, the way I looked at it, is we have a lot of legislators based on their experience. They're retired. They've worked there. Some are in their late 70s. Look at our governor's, and I think he's over 70, 73, maybe older. We have people that are older that are making laws, okay? Now we have people that enforce it. I have a sheriff that just retired at the age of 78, Mr. Johnson over there. So we have law enforcement that's going to basically enforce our laws. But we're going to put an age restriction on somebody that interprets the law? I mean, I just find that to be kind of discriminatory, because essentially we have a judicial commission that oversees as far as the judges.
Right, they've got a commission overseas there.
And so if you have a...
If he's senile, they can do something
about it. And that's the way the system is supposed to work. We had this bill, it came to the floor, it passed, but I had an accepted amendment to it. They moved it down to 72, and it's up in the Senate. They moved it from 75 to 72. I still cannot think that's correct. I'd like to see it at least bumped up, maybe at the maximum to 73 if they want to compromise. We're living longer. Yeah. People are wanting to do things. I know for example, I'll be 63 this year. Time goes by when you have, when you're doing things that you enjoy. A lot of people now that are 70, they don't want to have to feel, well, they have to step down from giving to the community or giving to the government. And we have issues too, that people that are younger than 70 that may have dementia, may have all. So it's on an individual basis. Yeah. You can't categorize people. And so that was the purpose of doing it, because we need to have good judges. And good judges, in my opinion, come with experience. They don't come right out of law school. They come with the hard knocks. They've been in the courtroom, and they've been there before. And I have seen good judges and I've seen bad judges, and I'll let the system work. But we have a system, and as a practicing lawyer, when I have a judge that knows what the level playing field is, everybody's on equal status.
I agree.
Okay.
Well, Paul, our time's up. We thank you for being with us. Folks, our guest tonight has been State Representative Paul Beckman from Prattville, and we thank you viewers for watching. Hope you'll tune again next week for Alabama Politics. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.